Kearney, New Jersey. 1958, the cutting torches are running. A ship, 827 feet of gray steel, is being towed up the river toward the yard. No aircraft on her deck, no crew at her rails, no colors flying, just the hull, moving slowly through the water, enormous and silent and already dead. Japan announced this ship was sunk in August of 1942. She kept fighting. Japan announced it again in October. She kept fighting a third time. She kept fighting. The Imperial Japanese Navy never managed to put her on the bottom of the Pacific. That took the United States government and a fundraising shortfall. This is the story of USS Enterprise, CV-6, the Big E, the Gray Ghost. She is launched on October 3rd, 1936, at Newport News Shipbuilding into Virginia sunlight. 827 feet overall, a flight deck wide enough to land aircraft and long enough to launch them. A tripod mast rising above her island superstructure, her silhouette like no other ship in the fleet. She is the 7th American warship to carry the name Enterprise, a name given to vessels since the Revolutionary War, and the name carries weight before she ever fires a gun. She is commissioned in May of 1938 and ordered to the Pacific by 1939. She trains on the Pacific's enormous distances, the flat blue emptiness of it, the way weather moves across it, the way a man on the flight deck can see nothing in any direction but water and sky. Her crew grows into the ship. The ship grows into its name. By early 1941, she is stationed at Pearl Harbor, and for a time she is a film set, an Errol Flynn picture, a naval adventure, cameras on the flight deck, actors in uniforms that have never seen weather, an American fantasy about carrier warfare, filmed on the actual instrument of it. The crew obliges. The cameras roll. Within months, she is flying combat air patrol. The 7th of December, 1941. Enterprise is 200 miles west of Oahu, returning from a mission to Wake Island. She should have made port the day before. A Pacific storm delayed her. The storm frustrated the crew, slowed the ship, burned extra fuel. Nobody on board is grateful for it. At 800, word arrives of the attack. 18 of her dive bombers are already inbound to Pearl Harbor on a routine approach. Their pilots expecting a landing, expecting breakfast, expecting nothing. They fly into a sky full of Japanese Zeros and American anti-aircraft fire. Some are shot down by their own side. Others thread through the smoke and explosions to land on whatever runway is still open. 7 are killed. 2 are wounded. The pilots who survived describe the harbor below them, black oil spreading across the water, the battleships listing and burning, the sky above Ford Island raining spent brass and broken aircraft. They were the only carrier-based Americans present at Pearl Harbor on December the 7th, 1941. They saw what happened. They flew home and told the crew. Vice Admiral William Halsey, Jr. does not order a mourning period. He orders the ship rearmed and refueled. A job that normally takes 24 hours is done in 7. They load the ship in darkness and sail back out into the Pacific looking for the enemy fleet. They don't find it. 3 days later, her aircraft locate the Japanese submarine I-70 and put it on the bottom. First blood. Halsey is 59 years old, large, broad-shouldered, with heavy eyebrows, and the bearing of a man who has never once considered backing down. He earned his wings at 52. Not the abbreviated program, the full course, cadet through qualification. He is aggressive to the point of recklessness, colorful, salty, and absolutely certain of what needs to be done. In those first desperate months of the war, he takes the ship out looking for a fight at every opportunity. Raymond Spruance is different in almost every way a man can be different from another man and still wear the same uniform. He is trim, angular, precise. He takes long walks on the flight deck alone to think. He gives no speeches. He cultivates no journalists. He is a surface warfare admiral, not an aviator, and when his name comes up in naval circles in the spring of 1942, most of those circles have not heard it. The public has not heard it at all. By May of 1942, these two men are the relevant figures in American carrier warfare. One the most celebrated, one the most obscure. Both are connected to Enterprise. One has defined what the ship is. The other is about to define what it can do. The Pacific is nearly out of carriers. Lexington burned and sank at Coral Sea in early May. Yorktown barely survived the same battle and arrives at Pearl Harbor needing months of repairs. She gets 72 hours. Enterprise has been spared. She arrived too late for Coral Sea. But now she is one of the last working aircraft carriers America has in the Pacific Ocean. And Halsey is sick. The illness has been building for months. Stress-induced severe weight loss. A debilitating skin condition, psoriasis across his body. Relentless. By late May 1942, Vice Admiral William Halsey is ordered to a naval hospital at Pearl Harbor and taken off his flagship. He cannot stand. He cannot command. He chooses his own replacement, Spruance, the quiet surface admiral, the man nobody has heard of. On May 28, 1942, Enterprise departs Pearl Harbor under Rear Admiral Raymond Spruance's flag. Her orders: to hold Midway Atoll and inflict maximum damage on the enemy by strong attrition tactics. Those orders come from Admiral Nimitz, and Nimitz knows something the Japanese do not. A team in a basement at Pearl Harbor has broken the Japanese naval code. The entire Japanese plan, the carriers, the transports, the 350-ship armada, is known. The attack on Midway Island is not a surprise to the Americans. The Americans are the ones waiting in ambush. The Japanese fleet believes it is sailing toward a decisive engagement on its own terms. It is not. It is sailing toward Enterprise and two other American carriers, positioned and waiting. Everything the Japanese have planned, the feints, the timing, the confidence of veteran aviators who have not lost a major engagement in 6 months of war, is built on an assumption that has already been falsified. June 4, 1942. The Japanese strike Midway Island as planned, and then the American dive bombers arrive. Torpedo Bomber Squadron 6, VT-6, Enterprise's own, flies in first. They are flying Douglas TBD Devastators, slow, obsolete aircraft against a fighter screen of veteran Zero pilots. They come in low, over the water, into concentrated anti-aircraft fire and screaming fighters. Nearly all of them are shot down. The crews know before they launch what the odds look like. They launch anyway. The Zero pilots come down to meet them, down to the wave tops, stripping the altitude above the Japanese carriers of fighter cover, which is where the dive bombers are, already in their dives. Within minutes, 3 Japanese fleet carriers are burning. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, then a 4th, Hiryu, the survivor, which first cripples Yorktown with its own strike before Enterprise bombers find it in the late afternoon and leave it burning. Hiryu sinks the next day. The Japanese lose 4 fleet carriers, every carrier they brought, in a single afternoon. Air crews that have fought from Pearl Harbor to Ceylon, the veterans of Japanese naval aviation, go down with the ships or into the water. Enterprise comes through the battle undamaged. She returns to Pearl Harbor on June 13th. The battle that just changed the direction of the Pacific War was fought from her flight deck, commanded by the admiral nobody had heard of, while the admiral whose name was on every front page lay in a hospital bed. Spruance says nothing about this. He never does. At the Naval Academy some years later, Halsey says of it, "Missing the Battle of Midway was the greatest disappointment of my life. But I'll sink those damn Jap carriers yet." August 1942. The Marines on Guadalcanal are clinging to Henderson Field by the slimmest possible margin. The Japanese are running reinforcement convoys down the slot, the waterway between the islands, night after night, feeding the fight. Enterprise is in the South Pacific as shield and sword simultaneously. Her job is to keep the Japanese from the sky over Guadalcanal. Her job is also to sink their ships. August 24th. Contact, a strong Japanese force 200 miles north of Guadalcanal. Task Force 61 sends its planes. The light carrier Ryujo is sunk. The Japanese reinforcement convoy turns back, and then the Japanese dive bombers find Enterprise. 3 direct bomb hits, 4 near misses. A 74-foot section of her flight deck gone. 74 killed, 95 wounded. Below decks, in the machinery spaces, a crack has opened in the afterbearing pedestal of the number. 2 high-pressure turbine, cast iron, split along the inboard side, the kind of damage that stops a ship. The flight deck is burning, the hangar deck is smoke and chaos, and men working hoses through heat that bends the air. The damage control teams save her. That night, Radio Tokyo announces that Enterprise has been sunk. It is the first time. She is, at that moment, steaming toward Pearl Harbor under her own power, already making emergency repairs at sea. The Japanese pilots were not lying. They filed honest battle reports. They saw a burning carrier with explosions along her flight deck and smoke rising from her for miles. From the air, at distance, through the chaos of a battle, she looked like a dying ship. She was a dying ship. She just refused to finish dying. 6 weeks. That is what Pearl Harbor has. The shipyard closes the deck, replaces the turbine bearing, strips out the old anti-aircraft mounts, and installs quadruple 40mm Bofors guns. Fits new radar. Brings aboard Air Group 10, the Grim Reapers, under Commander James Flatley, fresh pilots with an unforgiving war ahead of them. On October 16th, 1942, Enterprise sails south again. 10 days later, off the Santa Cruz Islands, she finds the Japanese carrier force that has been hunting her. October 26th, 1942. Enterprise and Hornet, CV-8, the ship that launched the Doolittle raid, the sister carrier with her own legend, are the last 2 American fleet carriers in the Pacific Ocean. Everything else is gone or in a yard somewhere. These 2 ships are what stands between Japanese naval air supremacy and the loss of Guadalcanal. Both sides find each other at roughly the same time. The battle begins with aircraft crossing in the air. Both sides strikes passing each other en route. Enterprise hits Japanese carriers and cruisers. Japanese dive bombers find Enterprise and Hornet. Hornet takes hit after hit. Bombs through her flight deck, torpedoes into her hull, a burning Japanese aircraft flown deliberately into her island. She starts to list. She does not recover. Enterprise takes 2 bomb hits, 44 killed, 75 wounded, fires in the hangar bay, flooded compartments. Her own wounds are serious. And then, through smoke and burning, Hornet's orphaned aircraft begin arriving on her deck. Pilots with nowhere else to land, planes without a home, the last aircraft of a dying carrier coming to the only carrier still capable of receiving them. Hornet burns on the horizon. Enterprise is the only functioning American aircraft carrier in the Pacific Ocean. One carrier, damaged, with civilian construction workers still below decks. Radio Tokyo announces Enterprise destroyed. The second time. She is taking on her dead sister's planes while fighting her own fires. Captain Osborne Bennett Hardison, Ozzy B as the crew calls him, commands the ship. He is not given to drama. He is given to getting things done. While the ship sails for Noumea to begin emergency repairs, while construction workers with welding torches work in the passageways, while his crew buries its dead, Hardison sends a dispatch to the Navy Department. The emergency repairs accomplished by this skillful, well-trained, and enthusiastically energetic force have placed this vessel in condition for further action against the enemy. Not a cry for help. Not a request for sympathy. A statement of fact from a man who does not appear to find any of it remarkable. She heads for Noumea on October 30th. She sails back to the Solomons on November 11th. Construction workers are still aboard. Still welding, the ship is moving at flank speed toward the next battle while the repairs are unfinished, while the men with hard hats and rivet guns feel the deck vibrating under them and hear the gun drills and understand, in whatever terms each man privately chooses, what kind of ship they're living on. On November 13th, her Avenger torpedo bombers find the Japanese battleship Hiei and hit her repeatedly, then land at Henderson Field, rearm, and hit her again. Hiei is scuttled by the Japanese that evening. It is the first Japanese battleship lost in the war. Enterprise's aircraft sent it down. By November 15th, when the naval battle of Guadalcanal ends, she has shared in sinking 16 ships and damaging 8 more. The island is saved. The Japanese will never again have a realistic chance of retaking it. Somewhere in this period, Radio Tokyo announces Enterprise destroyed for the 3rd time. By now the pattern is established, and the pattern is this: the Japanese are not wrong about what their pilots see. A burning carrier, explosions, smoke visible for miles. They report what they observe. What they cannot observe is what is happening below the waterline. The men fighting the fires, the welders closing the holes, the damage control teams turning a dying ship back into a fighting one. The Japanese war planners are making decisions based on the assumption that American carrier power in the Solomons is broken. The asset they are planning around is the same asset, repaired again, steaming back. Always the same ship. May 27th, 1943. Admiral Nimitz stands on Enterprise's deck and presents her with the first Presidential Unit citation ever awarded to an aircraft carrier. The ship has been officially killed 3 times. She is receiving her first formal commendation. She goes to Puget Sound for a real overhaul, the first genuine rest since Pearl Harbor. Months in a stateside yard, she comes back transformed. She is redesignated CVN, the N for night. The only carrier in the fleet specially equipped and trained for nocturnal operations. She attacks when other ships cannot see, using radar where Japanese defenses are blind. In February 1944, she strikes the Japanese naval bastion at Truk in the first night radar bombing attack launched from an American carrier. The ship that arrived at the Pacific War in 1941 as a conventional carrier platform is now something Japan has no answer for. June 19th, 1944. The Battle of the Philippine Sea. Enterprise is among 4 carriers of Task Group 58.3 when the largest carrier aircraft battle in history begins. For more than 2 days, Japanese naval aviation attempts to destroy the American fleet. Over the course of those 2 days, 426 Japanese carrier aircraft are destroyed. 3 Japanese carriers are sunk. The Americans call it the Great Mariana's Turkey Shoot. The IJN's air arm is finished as a strategic force. It will never recover the pilots, the experience, the carrier decks. Enterprise was at Pearl Harbor when Japanese naval aviation was at its zenith. She is here at its destruction. 1945. The war is in its final phase, and it is a different kind of war. She supports the Marines on Iwo Jima from February 19th through March 9th. During one stretch of those operations, she keeps aircraft aloft over the island continuously for 174 hours. 7 straight days. Her flight deck crews work in darkness, in cold, turning aircraft around by field and habit, launching into the black sky and recovering in it, sleeping when they can and working when they cannot. The men on Iwo Jima look up at night and hear engines. It is Enterprise. Then the strikes on Japan itself. February 16th and 17th, 1945. Direct carrier strikes on Tokyo. In April 1942, Enterprise had covered the Doolittle raiders approaching Japan from the north. The unglamorous shield, the ship nobody knew was there. Now she is here again, covering strikes on the Japanese home islands. The war has traveled its full circle. And then Okinawa. By spring of 1945, Japan has largely abandoned conventional air warfare. The carriers and the trained air crews are gone. What remains is the kamikaze, a pilot in a plane aimed at a ship, a weapon that cannot miss because it does not need to hit. It only needs to arrive. Enterprise is hit and damaged in April. She repairs and returns. She's always returning. On May 6th, she is off Okinawa again, flying patrols around the clock. May 14th, 1945. A Zero comes in, low, through a gap in the anti-aircraft fire. Its pilot is Lieutenant Junior Grade Shunsuke Tomiyasu of the Imperial Japanese Navy. He flies his aircraft into Enterprise's forward elevator well at full speed. The explosion lifts the elevator, a massive steel platform 48 by 44 feet, designed to move aircraft between the hangar and the flight deck, and drives it upward. Photographs taken afterward show it standing nearly vertical. 14 men are killed. 68 are wounded. The gray ghost finally stops. Shunsuke Tomiyasu. He was not a faceless weapon. He was a young Japanese naval officer who flew toward a ship that had been trying to be killed for 3 years and 9 months and had refused every time. He accomplished in one pass what the entire Imperial Japanese Navy could not accomplish across 4 years of war. He did not live to know it. Enterprise sails for Puget Sound. She enters the yard on June 12th. She's there when the Japanese surrender on August 15th, 1945. The war ends. The most experienced combat carrier in the United States Navy is in dry dock. The most decorated warship in American history, 20 battle stars, 911 enemy aircraft destroyed, 71 ships sunk, is not at Tokyo Bay on September 2nd, 1945, when Japan signs the instrument of surrender. A single Lieutenant Junior Grade in a single Engine Zero sent her to the yard 2 months before. The ceremony proceeds without her. She brings the boys home. Former prisoners of war, men who spent years in Japanese camps, come aboard at Pearl Harbor and sail home on Enterprise. Hospital patients, servicemen due for discharge. 1,141 men in total, crossing the Pacific and through the Panama Canal to New York in October of 1945. The ship that fought the whole war carries its survivors home. On one of her subsequent voyages, the British Admiralty presents her with the British Admiralty Pennant, the highest decoration the Royal Navy bestows, never given to a foreign vessel in over 400 years. The British make an exception. She is decommissioned on February 17, 1947. The campaigns to save her begin almost immediately. In 1946, the plan is to hand her to the state of New York as a permanent memorial. The plan falls through in 1949. Subsequent campaigns launch, the fundraisers organize. The public is asked to contribute to the preservation of the most decorated warship in American history. The ship that was at Pearl Harbor and Midway and Eastern Solomons and Santa Cruz and Guadalcanal and Philippine Sea and Iwo Jima and Okinawa, the ship that Japan announced dead 3 times and could not kill. The money does not come. There is a promise to save the tripod mast. Her most distinctive feature, the silhouette that every crewman who ever served aboard her would recognize from miles away, to install it in the new football stadium at the Naval Academy. The promise is not kept. A plaque is installed at the base of a tower. The tower is still called Enterprise Tower. On July 1st, 1958, the United States Navy sells USS Enterprise to the Lipset Corporation of New York City. The sale price is approximately $500,000. She is towed to Kearney, New Jersey. The cutting torches begin their work. Scrapping is complete by May of 1960. Admiral Halsey, who had fought to save the ship in his last years, did not live to see another ship carry the name. The tradition holds that the man who had commanded her through the worst of 1942 died within a year of the scrapping. He could not be beaten in war. He watched the ship he loved sold to scrap dealers. What survived? One of her anchors at the Washington Navy Yard. Her commissioning plaque, a 16-foot, 1-ton nameplate salvaged from her stern, which sat for decades beside a Little League baseball field in Rivervale, New Jersey. In 2025, that nameplate was finally refurbished and mounted for proper display at the USS New Jersey Battleship Museum. The last piece of the hull that exists in the world, 65 years after the cutting torch is finished, properly displayed at last. And the bell. The ship is gone, but the bell survives. It hangs outside Bancroft Hall at the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, and it rings, but only when the midshipmen beat army. The future officers of the United States Navy ring the bell of the most decorated warship in American history to celebrate a football game.